Welcome to Are You Done Yet? The podcast brought to you by Innovative E, the 2023 and 2024 Microsoft Partner of the Year winner and a 7-time Microsoft Award winner in the last 6 years. Hosted by Mike Taylor, CEO of Innovative E, and Bryan Quick, Senior Director of Business Development, this podcast is your go-to resource for transforming your organization's project and work management strategies, enabling you to become a higher-performing organization with happier people. And now, Mike Taylor and Bryan Quick.
Hi, and welcome to Are You Done Yet? The podcast about your project and work management challenges. I'm Mike Taylor with Innovative E, and as always, I have with me Bryan Quick.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast today. Mike, I'm excited about this episode, Modernizing Project Management. We're continuing the series today, and this one's about maximizing your investment.
Yeah, it's super exciting. We're hearing, I guess this goes back maybe 3+ years when we actually had customers start talking to us about modernizing, and we kind of, it became kind of a thing, almost like a movement, right? People are modernizing all kinds of things. Digital transformation and project management is being pulled along with that. I think people are really seeing the benefits and advantages, especially some of our kind of early adopter customers that we started working with back in that time frame. They're really starting to be much further along that journey of realizing value out of a more modern platform.
Yeah, it really is a movement, Mike. And people are realizing that, you don't have to go shopping out there for a project management tool anymore. You already have one. It's called your Microsoft platform, right?
That's exactly right. And in fact, I think that's one of the first bullets we wanted to cover is you don't necessarily need another project management tool, right? I mean, most organizations have, the studies will tell you 5.7, it's like having the 2.3 kids, right? 5.7 project and work management tools in the average enterprise organization. So there's an awful lot out there, and there's been a proliferation over the years. We've talked a lot about this. There's been a lot of the born in the cloud solutions. There's alternate platforms outside of Microsoft. But really that has added a lot to the, each tool brings its own set of value, but it also then adds to the complexity of the overall project and work management. And the work management is a big piece of that. It's not just the project and PPM type work, right? It's also the work going on throughout the entire enterprise. So, don't necessarily need a new tool. You may start to look at some of the more modern tools, like Planner. Planner is a great tool, and it's really evolving rapidly. The Microsoft team and engineering team and product team is doing a great job of bringing that along. But there's still a few gaps, and there's still some things that we and other partners are working to solve there. But in general, buying a new holistic monolithic PPM tool is really not what we're seeing in the marketplace these days. And I think some of our competitors and friends out there, frenemies, are seeing exactly the same thing because we talk to these guys all the time.
Sure are. And it occurred to me the other day that if you really do put collaboration first in project management, then even if you don't have the best project plan out there, there's maybe a few gaps in it. It's you didn't get to spend as much time as you'd like, sequencing the tasks. If collaboration is amplified, you can fill in those gaps. If the team is working together more effectively, you don't need a perfect project plan because they're going to get it done. They're going to collaborate with one another. They're going to pull together, and they're going to get it done. So maximizing collaboration is what we're talking about. And where better to do that, Mike, than in Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, 100%. And you've said this for a number of years, Bryan, that a lot of these applications that were built, and pick a little bit on Project Online, it was the same kind of thing. It was at the end of the day, it was one of the better ones of putting collaboration in. But collaboration has always been kind of an afterthought with these tools, right? It's like we'll focus on task management and how well you can do that, and the resource management and the dependencies and the scheduling and all that kind of stuff. Or if you're in the work management space, maybe it's agile type stuff, and you're talking about getting your epics and your stories and all that stuff put together and organizing the work, which is critically important. However, the collaboration piece has always kind of taken a back seat, and that's why in the Teams approach, team-centric, or if you're on the modern Microsoft platform, you're looking at Teams because a lot of the work's already going on there. And we talked about this the other day. A new stat kind of emerged recently out of we do a lot of research and talking with folks, and this stat popped up on an AI search I did the other day that 70 to 90% of the effort associated with project management is collaboration.
There you go.
Yep. It's
collaboration first, right? So instead of putting the tool that you're going to create the plan in first, or that you're going to log time in first, and you're going to buy a tool for that, you should buy a collaboration tool get your projects done, and you already own one. So that's really the theme of today's podcast, is maximizing your investment, because you already have Microsoft 365, unless you're a Google shop. And if you're a Google shop, this isn't the episode for you. But
Probably none of our episodes are for you.
but you already have a Microsoft 365. You probably have an E3. You may even have an E5 plan, or the equivalent small business plan or government plan. And what those things enable you to do, first and foremost, is have access to Microsoft Teams and be collaborating with one another through Microsoft Teams. So that's set. That's done. You already own that. Moving that to the next level, in order to track projects in there, you're going to need some project management tools, which Microsoft makes available as a la carte licenses with Planner with premium features. You don't even need a license for the team members. You just need a license for the project manager. So they made that super easy.
They sure did.
If you are the kind of place that wants to use Microsoft Project Desktop because you have that type of robust need for project management, which we know is still out there, you can still leverage Project Online. And we've actually come up with very, very creative ways of integrating Project Online with Teams. So although Project Online is what we would call a legacy tool, it's built on the SharePoint platform. It's not part of this modern platform that we're talking about with Power Platform. We've come up with ways that we can actually integrate that in and make it part of the Teams experience. So you have those options. So instead of going and shopping for a monolithic PPM tool, you can just do a little bit more with what you have by adding these project tools into your environment, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's two examples that come to mind. One is from talking with one of our friends across the pond and talking about the kind of things that they're seeing and in their customer set, and they have a large customer set. They're one of the top partners as well. And they were saying that, the days of people coming in and shopping for, I want to install Project Online or I want to install XYZ PPM tool, and it's kind of a monolithic approach. It's going to solve all our problems. We're going to spend a lot of time making sure that we've got all the columns lined up. It's got all these features. Then we're going to make sure we have the adoption, change management, and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be this big initiative. It's hundreds of thousands or more dollars. And those days, we were collaborating a little bit about it. Those days are over. And then
they are.
It really comes to a discussion you and I had with a large, very large Fortune 20 company just the other day. And they were saying they're in the same situation. They're in kind of cost constraint mode. They're not interested in trying to do that type of approach. They have a lot of tools. They are Teams and Microsoft centric. They have the Power Platform. There might be some interest. They haven't gotten there yet, but there might be some interest. They think there's going to be some interest in leveraging things like Copilot and AI to kind of start to do digital assistance and get rid of some of the mundane tasks. But they're not in the mindset or the budgetary set to go out and buy this monolithic solution. So I think what we're saying is there's an adaptation of an approach to the market and a way to accommodate and meet customers where they are, right, Brian?
Absolutely, and things have moved, things have changed, and if you're paying attention, the Teams universe is sort of dominating corporate collaboration, and monolithic rip and replace strategies where you go shopping for a PPM tool, they're risky propositions. I mean, you're going to have trouble having folks adopt that tool because they're not really going to be motivated to use it from the perspective of getting their job done. It's really a tool for you to keep track of what's going on. So it's liberating for a lot of companies when they realize that they can just dig into that Microsoft investment that they've already made. And what they get to say to people is, I really need to start tracking these projects better. We need better dashboarding. We need enterprise grade dashboarding. We need resource management capabilities. But instead of suggesting that, we go buy this, $500,000 a year licensing tool and then another $500,000 to implement it or more, we're going to use Teams. And people are going to be like, wait a minute.
Right.
Teams doesn't do that. Teams doesn't do that. But yes, it can. Yes, it can. Exactly. If you're using the right tools in concert with Teams and you're leveraging the Power Platform to build around the Teams construct for your business processes and your reports, yes, it can. And we're talking to customers about doing that every day. So you basically get to say to people, I can have my cake and eat it too, right? I get my data, I get my ability to track what's going on, and you just get to use the tool that you're using every day anyway.
Right. Yeah. And maybe that becomes an evolutionary approach off of some of those tools, those 5.7 tools in the future, right? So your
Yeah.
your central IT organization, your CIO, CTO, the folks who care about licensure and overlap of feature functionality, like some of those tools, part of the licensure you're paying for is for file storage or workflow or other things like that, which you're getting as part of your M365 SKU. You might want to start looking at that over time, but you don't have to do it immediately. And I think
No.
that immediacy that you said it a second ago, the rip and replace, I don't think that that's really a strategy that most customers are willing to embrace these days. It's like we need more of an evolutionary approach. And I think a lot of folks are realizing, whether they call it this or not, that they really are on a journey. And, the next phase of their journey might be to look at an approach more like this, more platform-centric approach. And it really is a revolutionary concept to say that we're not going to just buy a product to go plug this hole, right? And we've got all these problems. We got to buy this one product and it's going to plug this hole, because that has never worked. People have tried it. We've seen dozens, maybe hundreds of organizations that have tried it, and I can't think of a situation where it worked flawlessly. It was always
people have almost given up on that, Mike. It's like they've thrown up their hands and they've said, I've tried to get people to use one thing. So it's important from a lot of different perspectives to have your finger on what's going on in the organization work-wise.
right.
To control strategic alignment to the projects, make sure people are doing the right ones, all the way from we don't know what people are doing. We don't know where they're spending their time on.
Right.
And there's probably some efficiencies there that we could gain, especially in market like we're in today, where, you can look at it and say, well, I need some efficiencies here. So you got to have visibility into those things. But in the past, visibility meant standardization, and it doesn't have to mean that today. We can pull in all these 5.7 tools that you're using today for project and work management into the team's environment. Because guess what? Power Automate has over how many connectors now, Mike? 800? 900. 900 connectors to various other tools that are probably already include the tools you're using. And if they don't, we can use APIs. We can a lot of those tools have like kind of lighter weight Teams integration solutions that you might want to start with. You got to get it into the community, bring project management to the community. And that is the way that we can start standardizing on this stuff without actually necessitating that people are all using the same work management tool. It's a gradual approach. And I think over time, you're right. Folks will start realizing that Microsoft has those kind of tools too. And they're pretty good. And you probably are double paying. And there may be some opportunity to consolidate at that point.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, go back to actually what people think about when they think about project management and helping the organization be more successful. It's about being able to, we talk about visibility and collaboration, all those things are great. But at the end of the day, by doing that work better, you end up delivering better project results. You have better visibility into the work earlier, and then you can make better decisions. You can use the productivity capabilities of things like we talked about, people buying monolithic tools. But when they bought those monolithic tools, they thought they were going to work out of the box. What ended up happening? They customized them, right? Because they immediately realized there's all these endpoint processes that go on for this department, or need to have this kind of information. Maybe it's financial information, maybe it's other information. Maybe you need to pull in information from another system that does more like agile work management. You need to consolidate this stuff, and so you're trying to write these APIs and everything else. Guess what? That's exactly what this generational platform that Microsoft built is all built for. So when you think about, when we talk about inverting the pyramid or thinking about it back upside down, go with a platform first approach, because that is exactly what the platform is built for. And what partners like us do is we optimize that for project and work management. Now, there's another component to that, which is then you said it a second ago, but I want to reemphasize it, bringing the data together. And most of that data is collaborative data. There's some information you bring from around task data and work data and things like that. But by centralizing that data onto the platform, into your client's data set, you now have a secure data set to work from. And by doing that, you can really start to extend those endpoint solutions, and you can do it much faster with the in the Power Platform, the low code, no code, or low code, pro code solution set. So those customizations that we saw for customers in the past, if they needed to do some of these things, some of these customizations could take 6 months or a year to go out and build. You could requirements, design, all that using C# or .NET or something like that. We've been able to redo some of those for some of our customers in weeks, right? And at much less cost, instead of tens or hundreds of thousands, maybe just a few $1,000s. And then as they are growing their own Power Platform and moving forward, you're seeing a lot more people building in like Copilot capabilities and Copilot development capabilities. As you have this common data set and secure data set because it's in your platform, then these capabilities become even more of what people can, some customers can do it themselves. They don't have to rely on partners to go do this. So it's a really exciting future for kind of the limitless capabilities when you start to work on a platform-centric approach rather than a specific tool-centric approach. You try to build everything around that tool. You spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and then some of our early adopters, we talked about at the beginning of this episode, some of our early adopters came to us with problems like, we have these monolithic solutions that were built on, say, Project Server and then moved to Project Online, and they've been in place since the mid-2000s. And we've customized around them, and guess what? Even our PMO, our PPM users, we're having a hard time with adoption. We're having a hard time keeping them using the tool so we get the value out of the tool. With this platform first, this collaboration first approach, like you said, everybody's already using Teams. They're already working in teams. The adoption to get people to continue to work in teams is almost zero. It's just it's formatted maybe slightly differently because you can use a structured, governed kind of construct there. But it's really easy to get people to work in teams, right?
It sure is. And, I want to talk specifically to those Project Server, Project Online people. I mean, what little collaboration, for the generation of those tools, collaboration, like you said, Mike, was better than the competition. But for what collaboration you have in there, it's been replaced already. People are already using Teams to collaborate on those projects. You just maybe don't know, or you've lost track of it, or it's happening on the side. So let's bring it back together by taking Project Server and upgrading it to Project Online. We can now put that data in the cloud, and we can integrate Project Online with Teams. We've done it for other customers. We've done it for Fortune 500 consumer products companies. We've done it for huge, large online education universities. We've done it for Fortune 20 healthcare companies, and we can do it for you. So what we can do is, once you're in that Microsoft Cloud, we can use the Power Platform to surround the solutions, build in your processes, all your customizations that you need. And like you said, Mike, those customizations are a lot cheaper to do in Power Platform than they ever were before, and cheaper to maintain. So once we do that, your data will then be centralized. People will use Microsoft Teams to access your solutions, but you wouldn't have lost anything because you're basically evolving into the solution. There's no missed time. There's no reset. It's a continuation of the tools that you're already using. So specifically talking to those Project Server and Project Online communities out there that are thinking they need something updated, we have the solution for you. We have the modernizing. That solution is the way to go.
Right, and it can be done in two steps. One of two ways, right? What most of our customers have done, because it's the most minimally disruptive way. If they have Project Server, they move to Project Online, or if they have Project Online, then there can be an extra step there. But they move to this center phase, which is kind of they've modernized, and by modernized on the platform means they still may be using Project Online, but all the collaboration and everything's being done in Teams. And this is a very attractive, proposition for a lot of customers because, like you said, people are already working in Teams, and now they've kind of standardized on that, and now all these customizations are happening. We've had customers that once we redid some of these customizations that were legacy customizations, they found out they needed to, change them again because business processes change. Maybe very large things happen. Maybe there was some organizational changes, some spinoffs, some M&A activity, something like that. It created business agility because the PMO could split these systems or merge systems or whatever they wanted to do much faster. They could adopt to new processes that were now a different way to do business much, much, much faster. I mean, orders of magnitude faster.
Sure.
Like, instead of years, literally weeks to get things done, to make these changes, get them tested and get them out there, and so that people were using them. And the adoption rates have gone up, so people are using the systems more. And interestingly enough, we talked about this a little bit earlier. We're also seeing expansion beyond. This is really an interesting thing that used to happen, right? When we used to do like project online implementations, almost inevitably we'd be working with a PMO or an IT department that had these very large, complex projects, and they wanted to get this done. We'd do it, and they would start seeing some success, and then there'd be another department. Maybe it was an HR department, or maybe it was an R&D department, or somebody else, and they'd say, "Hey, these guys could use the same solution," and we'd say, "Okay," but they're maybe not quite as mature, and this is a heavyweight product. And sometimes they'd say, "Well, let's put it in anyway, or let's get them to join the solution," and that almost never really worked out that well, did it, Brian?
No, I mean, you can't really force heavy tooling on a department that needs lighter tooling. I mean, they're always going to resist that. So it's not a one size fits all thing. That's why we have Planner with premium features, right?
Right.
So once you're in the Microsoft Teams and Power Platform environment with your solution, you may still be using Project Online for some projects. We'd like to talk to you about moving to Planner with premium features for any projects that you can.
Right.
And putting that portfolio together into one thing. So yeah, maybe there's some projects you can't quite move over there yet or use that for, or maybe there's a different department in your company that's lighter weight and they wouldn't touch project on the desktop. That's fine. So let's talk about using Planner with premium features. It really is a nice tool, and they really are doing some great things with it.
Right.
And we would talk to you about, why not use it? And if there are legit gaps, then okay, you have the traditional tool to lean on. You can still have a common portfolio. So that's what we want to try to do, is evolve into entirely using the new Power Platform. Planner with premium features is essentially a Power App. It was built on Power Platform, and you can build your Power Platform processes around it and your reports into a very nice PPM solution. Now, there are some legitimate reasons why people aren't using that yet. And we talk to customers about that every day. And again, you don't have to go cold turkey over there. You can evolve into it. You can use both for now. And even those other 5.7 tools, we bring those in too. You can use them all.
Right, exactly. So, to drill in on a point you made there, there's really two scenarios we see. So you've got and we've seen this happen with our customers. We come in and we help folks. Maybe they move to, they move Project Online into this modernization. They're using Teams for the PMO or PPM type solutions, and then other departments come in. In the past, if they tried to use Project Online for that, they may or may not have had much uptake on it. People may have looked at it and gone, "That's too much," or they tried it and go, hard to get people to adopt it because it's so heavyweight. What we've seen is these other departments that are coming in, and we do a lighter weight solution based on Planner for a project management, a pure project management type thing. They're doing schedule management and everything else, just not as detailed, and not as, maybe they don't have some of the things like resource management and stuff. It's not as big of a constraint or need for them. They're having much higher success with that, right? They're saying, "Hey, this actually works for us," and it's fine because we didn't need some of that other capability. And so we're seeing that expansion into the other parts of the organization, and they're getting benefit out of getting out of things like spreadsheets and email and maybe some third-party tool that does part of the thing, but now you're bringing it together. The second piece that you mentioned, which is really important, is because Planner with premium features is a first-party modern Power Apps based tool, you're able to extend it. So we actually have some folks who've come in with departments that they're not even thinking that their problem is a project management problem, right? So we've been introduced by the PMO or somebody in IT, and somebody says, "Well, I've got this problem and it does this, this, and this." And we say, "Well, at its heart, there's some pieces of that are project management in terms of you've got scheduled dependencies. So you've got tasks that you're managing and there's dependencies, but they don't look at it that way. They've been using linked spreadsheets and everything else, but you can very quickly build that solution and make it into something that doesn't even feel like a project management solution, but it's using the underpinnings of that first party app because it's easy to integrate with. And we use Power Apps on top of it, the reporting on top of it, Power BI, like you said, and they love it. It's now an internal app that they use rather than all this other stuff that was homegrown and brittle and clunky and sometimes didn't deliver good results, or the results were late or whatever. So now they have a solid application that's built onto this platform with this extension in Planner. They don't even have to know that it's Planner underneath, right? It just works.
A lot of that stuff that's being done is project management in one way or another. That's how I came into project management in the first place. I was, we were doing things, They weren't going well. They weren't being managed like a project. And I thought I found it extremely liberating once I learned how to manage things like a project,
Right.
that I could get things done a lot more effectively. So we're finding those people in the organization that wouldn't even think to purchase a project management tool or go shopping for one. But by basically showing them results in one department in teams, as teams is sort of like the way you access it. And the light bulb comes on, and they're like, oh, I didn't know teams could do that. And it's not just teams; it's basically teams working in concert with Power Platform and project management tooling. But to them, it's like that's where I go. I go to Teams, and that's what I can tell my folks is instead of just using Teams as a file repository and to chat with one another, we can actually have a plan in there. We can actually log risk in there and issues, and we can track our lessons learned in there, and we can have reporting in there of what's going on. And it's like, oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, bring this back to data one more time. I know people get tired of hearing me say it, but it really is, it's a revolutionary concept because all the things you just said, issues, risk, all that kind of stuff, if you're doing it all in a central repository, now you're building a better data set. Yeah. And that data set becomes really valuable in the future. And you can actually start to do things. We've talked about this with like Copilot agents and embedded AI and things to start to take some of the work away from the project managers in a good way, because it's mundane work that we don't necessarily like to do and maybe don't do well as a project manager because you're busy doing other things. So you can't get the notes in, you can't get the risk logged and all that kind of stuff. So you're building a better data set and a centralized data set. And that enables you to then leverage in the future. You hear a lot of stuff about people saying AI and predictive analytics and all this stuff and actually making decisions and all that. That's great, but you can't do it if you don't have the data. And so what you're talking about here is bringing more and more of the work, not just from the PMO or PPM solutions, but to across the organization. And as you build that, there's actually some, the term bespoke or is being thrown around a lot these days, but there's these aha moments, these light bulbs that come on and people go, oh, we have all this interesting data now, and it's consistent and it's in a place that we can get to it because it's in our tenant and we know where it's at, whether it's in a Teams list that's because it's created and done that way, or it's in a Dataverse database, or it's, wherever it is, it's now in a consolidated area. And we can do really interesting, and we can solve problems we didn't know we could solve before. And that's where it gets really interesting. Rather than saying we've got this process and we want to figure out how to get people to follow this process and then build the technology on it. In some regard, and that still will always happen, but in some respects, you're going to get the opposite will happen. Will be, hey, we've got this data set and we've got this capabilities, and there's this set of problems. Maybe we can go solve some of those now by connecting this up and using this platform to do it in a very efficient and fast manner.
I mean, that's pretty compelling. Think about what we're saying there. By collaborating better on your projects, using the tool you're already using today, you're essentially creating the future of AI at your company and in your PMO
for project
by just simply doing that.
Yeah.
Because the result of doing that is a centralization of data in your private Microsoft cloud. So it's not gimmicky AI where you're going off and asking something a question and it's giving you an answer. That's not what we're talking about. It's not the consumer grade on the internet stuff. We're talking about making a data set in your private Microsoft cloud where you can then point AI solutions at that when you're ready. And we're already doing it for our customers today.
Yep.
So we can do it tomorrow if you want. But if you're not quite ready for those results yet, set the stage, set the platform. Be the person in your organization that prepares people for AI, but don't rock the boat. Just tell them we can just use Teams. It's creating a centralized data repository, and we're going to be able to leverage that for great things in the future.
Yeah, and it's pretty quickly you can show some of those things you can do, like with Copilot, with Copilot agents and Copilot Studio. You can start to really drill into very meaningful use cases, and we can show some of those. Folks who want to talk to us, it's really exciting stuff, and that in of itself helps build that data set. Additionally, right, AI is now doing some of that mundane work and populating that data, which is important because it's not just humans having to enter the data all the time. So that adoption piece of getting people to do things more and more, we're going to get the machines to do that work that's redundant and repetitive and mundane, and then you can build on top of that, and that's the really exciting stuff.
It is. And we're doing it today with our customers. And we'd love to talk to other customers about it and create more case study evidence on it if you'd like to go public with your journey. Mike, we wanted to also remind people, we had a recent webinar. It was called Boost Organizational Performance via Project Management, 3 Steps. And what we talked about there is similar concepts, but we dig into that very specific 3 things that you can do today in order to boost organizational performance. And we'll link to that webinar recording in our show notes so that you can take a look at it in case you missed it.
Yep, that was good. It was well attended, as most of them are. There's a lot of interest out there. It was great.
All right. And then also, Mike, wanted to talk about your book. Why don't you summarize a little bit about that the book right now, and maybe some folks out there want to really dive in and get to know these concepts.
Yeah, the book is Revolution. The Project Management AI Revolution is here, and it's practical strategies for improving organizational performance with happier people. Is the subtext of it, and the whole basis of the book was a lot of stuff we're talking about here. Is that AI is here, but there's ways, and the reason it says practical, and there's kind of what we were talking about, Brian. Is there's a lot of very heady stuff going on. I think a lot of people are starting to come down to earth after a year and a half of hearing about AI. But that coming down to earth means how do you actually use it in a practical manner that can build up to something more meaningful? So it becomes sort of a symbiotic relationship between humans and AI. And that's what the book is about. It goes a little bit about the history of project and work management, and that there's a disconnect between the work and the systems that govern it, because we as project managers have to go enter all that information, the status notes, the task notes, all that kind of stuff. And AI can help start doing some of that. And that's where, we'd love to show you guys how we're doing some of that, how Microsoft's doing some of that with Copilot's out of the box, how those things can come together. And it creates an opportunity to really grow the whole project management practice in a way that never was before, and deliver on success rates that have always traditionally been very bad, and they haven't gotten any better with the introduction of all these tools. And these tools that are, they're great tools, and they're using AI, but there's still embedded AI at the tool and at the endpoint level. And what we're talking about is bringing it into the central level. And part of the book's premise is also that, I don't think we call it teams too much and try to keep it more high level, but for us, it is Microsoft and the ability to do things in that common repository, and the fact that collaboration is a huge piece of project and work management, and that by bringing it together and applying AI, you're building a better vision of the future, a better strategy in the future. And the happier people, you hear a lot more people talking these days about well-being. We've seen it for years of, when you do get better systems in place, it improves communication between different groups, between stakeholders and PMOs and the project teams and the team members and the people doing the work. And when there's more visibility and alignment, it improves morale almost overnight when you can do those kinds of things, because people are like, they're literally on the same page. It's no longer, IT saying no to this because they're overburdened, but they can't prove it, and their stakeholders don't know how to help. And all of a sudden it starts to come together. And we're talking about doing that on an enterprise level in ways you could never do before. And so it's super exciting, because when people are, it's kind of a cyclical cycle of success, an upward spiral of success. When you have better data and better tools that are working, then the people become happier, and they become better at doing their jobs, and they're doing more of, like you say all the time, the leadership stuff. That's part of what's in the book as well. Is you really empower people to do leadership skills and the human skills and let AI do the mundane stuff. So that's the kind of the gist of it. Is there's a very bright future, and I think you've quoted this stat a lot, Brian. There's going to be, I think Gartner said 80% of project management tasks will be automated by 2030. So we're coming up on 5 years now. I think that stat came out last year. But there's going to be 25 million new project management jobs in the same time frame. So AI is not going to replace the work, but the work of the project managers is going to change. And that's a little bit of what we delve into in the book as well.
Yeah, and if you want your work to change, if you don't want to do your TPS reports anymore or whatever they are, you're looking for something better out of your project management career, I mean, now's the time to really dig into what these tools can offer you. Stop being a project tracker. Stop being a task tracker, following people around and figuring out what people are up to. Start being a project manager, which is what you want out of your career in the first place.
Absolutely.
Also, Mike, I wanted to say that you can subscribe. Please do subscribe to Are You Done Yet?
Subscribe
And catch up on previous episodes, either on our website, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. What we're going to do is we're going to do another episode on this modernization track called The Role of AI in Modern Project Management. So stay tuned for that. We're going to specifically dig into AI. Once you've created that common data set, possibilities are really endless. So we're going to dig into that conversation. And we invite you to contact us and talk about modernization in your organization. If there's something that you have a question about, or you think you might be thinking about a modernization track, you can let us know. We'll put our contact information down in the show notes as well. Anything else you wanted to mention today?
I think that's it. It was a pretty comprehensive episode. So we're really excited. Obviously, people watching can tell we're very excited about it and the future of project work management and everything that's capable now that has never really been capable. You know, those capabilities and the platform capabilities and the kind of convergence of thought and AI is really making things very exciting future.
Absolutely, Mike. So I'm excited to talk about this in our next episode. Until then, thanks for watching Are You Done Yet? And remember, project managers' work is never done, is it?
That's right. Never done. No matter how much AI you put in there, we're always still going to have a lot of work to do.
All right. Take care out there, everybody.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Are You Done Yet? Remember to like and subscribe, and check out the show notes for links to Mike's book and our webinar. Leave us a comment or share your thoughts on today's topic. We value your insights and look forward to sparking a conversation about the future of project management. Join us next time as Mike and Bryan discuss the role of AI in modern project management.